I came across this story on Creepy Encounters, and while the original poster eventually deleted their account, the details stuck with me like a bad dream. The OP, a 27-year-old woman living alone in a small bungalow in Oregon, began noticing odd changes in her home. At first, it was just little things: food missing from the fridge, the TV on when she was sure she turned it off, and the occasional item misplaced. She assumed it was just forgetfulness, maybe stress from her new job, and brushed it off. Then she started waking up to strange smells, like stale sweat and body odor, hanging in the air of her bedroom, even though she kept her windows open and house clean. One morning she found the bathroom light on and the mirror fogged, as if someone had just showered. She lived alone. What pushed her to take action was the sound of movement above her ceiling while watching TV late one night. At first it was soft, a shuffle like a rat or raccoon maybe, but then it became deliberate. Footsteps. She turned the volume down, holding her breath as each creak of the floorboards overhead sent chills down her spine. She called a friend to come over and help check the attic. What they found was horrifying. A man in his 40s had been living in the small crawl space above her ceiling for who knows how long. He'd set up a makeshift bed, had some food wrappers, a flashlight, and even a few pieces of her clothing tucked into a duffel bag. Worst of all, he had a notepad filled with disturbing entries, some mundane like she works 8-5 and uses lavender shampoo, but others far darker. Tonight? And wait until she's asleep. The police later found he'd been living in her attic for at least 2 weeks, maybe more. He had no connection to her, no reason for choosing her house. He just slipped in one day and stayed. This one was shared on our Let's Not Meet by a guy who had been working night shifts as a security guard at an old office complex that was slowly being phased out. Most of the tenants had moved to newer buildings, so by the time he started, only one floor was still in use during the day, and it was completely empty at night. His main job was to patrol the building every few hours, check cameras, and ensure the entrances were locked. Easy money. At first, he said everything was quiet for the first few nights, until he started getting calls on the old internal phone system from unoccupied offices, specifically room 311. The phone would ring once, then go dead. He checked the room the first time it happened, figuring it was a glitch. The place was cold, empty, dark, and dusty. Nothing out of place. But then it happened again and again. Always room 311. Always just one ring. After about a week, he told his supervisor, who shrugged it off, saying, "That whole line's been disconnected for years. That floor's dead." Still, the calls kept coming. Always one ring. Always at 3:11 a.m. He finally got fed up and decided to sit outside room 311 one night, phone radio in hand. Right around 3:10 a.m., he said the hallway got noticeably colder, not just chilly, freezing. His breath came out in white puffs. Then, right on time, the phone at the desk inside room 311 rang once and stopped. He opened the door and walked inside. The phone, still on the desk, was unplugged from the wall. That's when he heard breathing. Not from the hallway, not from another room, from inside room 311. He turned, scanned the shadows, heart hammering, and caught a glimpse of something in the reflective surface of the turned-off computer monitor. Just a shape, slightly hunched, with what looked like an abnormally long neck and eyes that were too wide, too bright in the darkness. But when he spun around, there was nothing there. He quit that night. 2 weeks later, he logged back into Reddit and updated the thread. The building had been condemned due to black mold and unstable flooring, but he swore it wasn't mold that was making people sick. He claimed another guard had taken over, and also reported a thing in room 311. The new guy stayed 3 nights. Then he vanished. The last anyone heard, his car was found abandoned in the lot. The keys were still in the ignition. Room 311's phone line had been ripped out of the wall. This story was posted a few years back in our Nosleep, but it was supposedly based on real events. The original poster, let's call her Jenna, lived in a dense urban area, in one of those old brick apartment buildings where the back windows all face a narrow alley. She was on the 3rd floor, and from her kitchen window she had a perfect view into the windows of the building opposite. Most of the time there was nothing to see. People closed their curtains or kept their lights off. It was just rows of dark windows except for one. Directly across from her kitchen was a unit that always had its light on. Always. No matter the time, 3 a.m., 2 p.m. Didn't matter. And what was odd was that the room never changed. No movement, no people. Just a single stark bulb hanging from the ceiling, lighting up an empty living room with a beige couch, a coffee table, and a TV that was never on. At first, Jenna figured someone had just forgotten the light, or maybe it was a staged unit. But weeks passed, then months, and the light never turned off. She mentioned it in passing to her landlord once, who just shrugged. "That place is empty," he told her. "Has been since before you moved in. The last tenant left in the middle of the night, didn't even take her stuff." Now that made Jenna curious. She started watching the window more intently, looking for any signs of life. And eventually, she saw it. One night, around 1 a.m., as she stood at her sink washing dishes, she noticed movement. A figure had appeared in the apartment across the alley. A tall, skinny man wearing what looked like a black hoodie, standing perfectly still in front of the window. Facing her, not looking around, not doing anything, just standing and staring. She backed away from the sink slowly, heart pounding. After a few minutes, she peeked again. He was gone. The next day, the light was still on. The room looked just as empty as before, no figure, no signs of anyone having been there. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe she'd imagined him. Maybe it was a trick of the light or a shadow. She even walked around the block to try to see if she could get inside that building, but the front door was locked with a rusted chain, and the mail slots were overflowing. Definitely abandoned. Still, the light stayed on, and then it got worse. Jenna started hearing tapping on her window at night. Faint at first, like something gently bumping against the glass. She lived on the 3rd floor, and there were no fire escapes or ledges, no trees nearby, yet something was tapping. She told herself it was pipes or settling, until the night she heard whispering clear. Right behind her, she whipped around, but no one was there, just her empty kitchen, and the light glowing steadily from the apartment, across the alley. When she looked again, the couch was empty, but the door inside the unit was open now. Something had changed. Terrified, she installed blackout curtains, stopped looking out the window entirely, and tried to forget about it. But then her neighbor, a guy named Matt who lived below her, stopped her in the hallway one morning and asked, "Hey, do you know someone who's been watching you from across the alley?" Jenna froze. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," he said, frowning. "Just sometimes I look out my window at night and there's this guy standing in that apartment staring up. Doesn't move. Just watches your window." Gave me the creeps. Jenna moved out 2 weeks later. She never looked back, never returned, and never tried to find out who or what had been living in that abandoned apartment across the alley. The kicker. 2 months later, she got an email from a friend who still lived in the building. The apartment across the alley had finally gone dark, but now Jenna's old unit had a light on. Always. Every night. Forever.